you and I both know, and this is what I think differentiates you from most of the people who are in your category of service and career, is that it has to start with who to be before. And that's the first thing you told me. Just saying, listen, it's not like, hey, when people come into my firm, it's just like, here's the cookie cutter of everybody follows this format, and that's the path to wealth and wealth accumulation and security. It's like, well, we got to know the person. We got to know their values, their purpose, and all these other things.
The mindset of fear, sacrifice, and scarcity has been tried, and it has failed. It's time to shrug the idea of sacrifice, embrace value creation and abundance, and enhance your quality of life today while building wealth along the way. Welcome to Sacrifice Shrugged of the Wealth Labs podcast, where you can turn your thoughts into profits and build the life you love. We hit it off because one of our early conversations, maybe like our second or third conversation, was I had the 5 P's to prosperity, and you had
the 5 P's to prosperity.
Right. So mine were perspective, right? Think abundance first and have more, release the limitation. Second was purpose, narrow the focus, have it resonate with who you are. Third was then you build the plan based upon who you are and that purpose, so that you start filtering out things, not just taking everything on. Then you build the right team of professionals. Then the products support that. Because I'm thinking in a financial perspective in these 5 Ps. And so those were my 5 Ps.
Yeah, mine were, and so these were, I call it the 5P expansion sequence. Or
yours were more philosophical versus financial.
Yeah, it started the 5 Ps. So the first P is philosophy. Yeah. And there's nothing more rudimentary than philosophy.
And perspective and philosophy are very similar.
Well, your perspective comes from your philosophy. Right. See, you can't, there's nothing before philosophy. Philosophy is the root. There's nothing.
And yet people don't feel it's practical. Well, no. And it's the most practical thing that we have.
Nobody listening to this and nobody in the world doesn't have philosophy. Everybody has a philosophy. Right. The only question is, have you clearly defined it, or are you walking around with all this junk rolling around your head that you're completely unaware of? So philosophy, it starts, so you have to identify your philosophy. Next, and incidentally, I should add why, and I think Rand said it best, we keep referring to Rand. When you have contradictions in your basic philosophical premises, the only possible result is destruction. And the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. So contradictions lead to destruction, and the way that you resolve contradiction is through philosophy. That's the practical use of it. Right. Emerging from your philosophy is purpose. Right. So purpose is the second P. A lot of people walk around, talk about being purpose-driven and, having a purpose-driven business, being purpose-driven in your life. I get all that. As you said, we started on purpose in 1994. I understood the nature of purpose, the fact that only a human being can have a purpose. A dog doesn't have a purpose for its life. If it could choose a purpose, it wouldn't live with you. Cows don't choose purposes for life. There'd be no such thing as McDonald's, what I'm saying? Right. So human beings, what makes us different is the fact that we could choose a purpose. So once you have philosophy, and from that philosophy emerge your values, which is purpose, now those are the ultimate causes. Then the 3 effects are psychology is the first effect. And then you have a lot of self-help gurus who are stuck in behaviorism, thinking that we're pain, pleasure driven. And that's wrong. I mean, if you're in survival mentality, you're pain, pleasure driven, right? Because it's like you're seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. But you can't. In other words, isn't there something dehumanizing about that? That all I do through my whole life is either seek pleasure or avoid pain, seek pleasure or avoid pain, and you can make arguments for it. But the reality
100% of people would be addicts at that point.
Yeah,
100%.
That's where it would be.
Because that's where addiction is.
Either literally or figuratively. Right. But that would be the truth. With psychology, your philosophical premises will shape your psychological experiences. Your psychological experiences are effects, not causes. I mean, a quick example would be, supposing, and I'm not trying to have a political conversation, but supposing you have a liberally minded economic person in a room, you have a conservatively minded economic person in a room, and sitting between them is the leader of their country, and that leader of that country is signing, at that moment in time, new legislation that's going to increase taxes and further redistribute wealth in that culture, in that society. Now, you got the liberal person looking at that, and what's their emotional response? They're thrilled. They're turning cartwheels.
Social harmony and good.
They're very excited about the fact that this is happening. You got the conservatively minded person looking at that, and they are angry. Yeah. They want to go to war over this. This is wrong. You can't take my money and redistribute it without my consent. So you've got these two people, fully grown, accurately perceiving the exact same thing at the exact same time, having completely opposite emotional experiences, looking at the same thing. What's the difference between them? They're philosophy.
Right.
Your philosophical premises are going to shape your psychological experiences. And then once you get past now you understand your psychology. And mind you, because a lot of people talk about state management. You got to get... That's another, you talk about addiction. That's what I'm talking about. You get addicted to trying to manage states for brief periods of time, but nothing changes.
And eliminate the genuine emotion of sadness, anger, fear, like to ignore that exists.
To ignore it exists or to try
is to defy being a human.
And trying to numb it through state management.
I'm not in a state of nirvana, so I have those emotions.
And
if I push those down, it actually makes me less connected to human beings.
And less connected to yourself and other humans.
Well, that's where I think the self-hatred builds, is when we ignore that.
It has to. You can't help it to start to let that fester. So the point is, listen, I was a national champion competitive athlete in my youth. I understand state management for temporary periods of time to create something. Like I was in karate. So when I was in a match and I'm in a fight, you know what? My state management right there, really important, but still my philosophy drove my way to get to those states.
Right.
But at the same time, I've also somebody who's taught, like you, thousands of seminars around the world for a number of years. And you can go in there and get people whipped up into an excited state, but what's it like 2 days later? What's it a week later? And I call them self-help
Back to their philosophy, back to their state. Right.
So anybody who starts with psychology as a cause, they become what I refer to as self-help junkies. They're up, they're down. They read the next book, they're up, and then they're down for the next seminar.
Next event's the hit of self-help heroin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's but psychology is important, because when you have conflicting emotions, it tells you have a contradiction somewhere. Right. And that's where you go back down your philosophy and say, how do I work this shit out?
Right.
Once you have your psychology set up, then the next P is procedure. Procedures are important. But if I'm in a business that does $2 million a year in revenue, I'm just picking any number, and I learn a bunch of new procedures and nothing changes about my philosophy or purpose, I'll just get better at doing $2 million a year. I'm not going to 3, 4, or 5, or I'm not breaking through. So it just helps me better manage. So procedures are important. And if if your procedures are in contradiction to your philosophy and purpose, it will limit you from getting to success. So they're important, but you can't start with procedures.
Right.
And then the final P, if you line up your philosophy, purpose, psychology, and procedure, then prosperity is the outcome.
Right. So let's put this in practical application. Mm-hmm. So even though you had plenty of evidence that I was hilarious, you had plenty of evidence. Let's take, for example, when I went to you hosted the premiere for Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, in New York City, the part 1. Yeah.
And I just had a lot of beverages that day. We had a rough flight, dude. We hit wind shear.
Yeah.
They grounded flights.
Wow.
We had wind shear alarms going off. So I was edgy when I landed, and I just drank.
And this was New York City too, so it's
So I drank a lot, and then I remember sitting in the wrong seat, which was for the actors, and you had to come ask me to leave and sit in a normal seat.
Move, not leave. But
yeah, not leave. So anyway, we went to the W that night, and they had a DJ, which if a hotel has a DJ, I feel like they're asking for a party.
Right.
So I was in that type of mind where I was dancing with people that were registering, and they were asking me to stop. I was like, if the music stops, I'm happy to stop. And you and your wife, Lori,
they had the DJ in like a loungy area near where check-in was.
So I was,
the music was playing, and you're.
I'm not a great dancer. I'm just doing dumb stuff. And it's entertaining.
I've played basketball and banged under the boards with you. You're a pretty big dude, and and I can remember because you're not just dancing, but you're shaking your booty and knocking into people, moving them a few feet.
Yeah, with their luggage and everything. So with all this evidence, I remember I was actually being recorded for a documentary, and you came in, and I said, "Hey, you should come. I'm doing stand-up." And you said, "You're funny." Honestly, like I had never made you laugh.
I literally, it's funny in hindsight, but I didn't. Yeah, but I was being serious.
Your wife said, "Are you kidding me?" Because she could remember these things.
Yeah, I literally, you came and you said, I'm going to start working on a stand-up act. And I literally, I was being like almost innocently sincere. I'm looking like, you're funny.
And then what was best is, I don't know if you knew what was happening, but we had our friend Mike's birthday.
Yes. Oh.
And after dinner, they had time before they were going to this laser show. And I said, well, you guys come to my house. So everybody came to my house, and, you went and grabbed some drinks, and we hosted the party there. And then his girlfriend had said, hey, will you tell some jokes? Because they had seen me do stand-up. I 100% read the email, will you roast Mike for his birthday? So you're sitting there, and I started roasting him, and I watched you tear up, and I watched you roll on your seat, and maybe almost even got on the ground.
I was dying. And half of it was because I was laughing so hard, and half of it was because I was cringing and how uncomfortable I was, because Mike is a mutual friend of ours, and
my wife is in the back giving me the don't say it.
Oh my!
Don't.
You roasted him mercilessly.
She made me take the joke out that said, Mike, you have a face that only a woman who loves money could love. And she made me remove the joke.
That was one of several. I mean, I could repeat some of them. I won't. But so yes, I have to say, and incidentally, because I recently just saw a video of your last stand-up you did, and I was excited for you because you found this thing that you wanted to do. I'll tell you with all love, I didn't have high expectations. I was just, it's like taking somebody who's a little tone deaf, or thinking they're a little tone deaf, and they're saying, hey, I'm gonna start learning an instrument or start to sing. Yeah. And it's like, you know what? If you have the desire, you should go for that, but you just don't have high expectations. That was a high level professional set that you did, and I'm sitting there saying, holy crap, he might actually make this work and transition into this whole new career.
I'm not going to be a comedian, and here's why. It's not going to move the needle for the world to have another white comedian out there. But to integrate it into what we're doing.
Yeah.
So if we go with your 5 Ps, why is it that I love comedy? Well, from the time I was a kid, I had 2 sides of the family, my mom's side and my dad's side. The one commonality is they always wanted me to tell jokes.
Right.
From the time I could tell jokes. And they would get together and, tell those jokes. And so even when my grandpa get community awards, he'd say, oh, my grandson tells the funniest jokes. Now, they were inappropriate, so I didn't tell them during his community award. But even now, my one grandma that's still living, she's like, you don't tell your jokes enough. Right. And I actually flew to do a gig in Colorado because she lived there and she didn't go out that night. She said she didn't feel well, but my whole family is there. So yeah. I love that. And I love just kind of bringing it into a topic that can normally have a dryness or be a bit drab. Right. And it's also one of the easiest ways to admit imperfection, because it's the imperfection that makes comedy funny and connects you to the comedian.
Right. And you're really, really good at taking stuff from your life and translating it.
That one I gave you was 85% real.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
15% embellishment because it's just funnier.
Of course,
when you embellish.
You have to do that. But it was, I'm literally, I know that takes discipline to come up with that material, to write that material, to work that material, et cetera. And I looked and I said, holy crap, if I saw you on an HBO special, I would say this guy is worthy of an HBO special. So
from complete skeptic.
You took me from.
You risked our friendship with that moment. You just put it.
I literally just, if people said, which one of your friends you think are funny, you wouldn't have come to mind. I mean, it's not like you never made me laugh, but I wouldn't see you as a comic. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who's like a comedian. There's other guys I know, I mean, they're constantly they're comedic in nature. I didn't see you as comedic in nature. And I have to say that I think this is funny, but it goes to maybe a wider abstract point that I think maybe is worth talking about. And that is the idea of reinventing yourself, the idea of basically saying that, hey, I walked in here and a big part of my business activities now is that we make documentary films.
Right.
And we had, I'll call it an accidental success. It was just a passion project. And we ended up doing really, really well with it. And next thing you know, so let's do another one. Next thing you know, I'm in this business.
And I love that you now do WineRevealed, because you found a way to take your passionate hobby.
Yeah.
And profit.
Yeah, and that's what the story behind WineRevealed is in part. My wife and I, Lori, we have our holding company. We partnered with Jeff Hayes and Revealed Films, who has decades of documentary filmaking.
You would have placed him as a comedian if he said he'd do stand-up.
Oh, he would have been number 1 on my list.
Yeah. He should do it sometime.
Yeah. But he's a different. I don't know.
He's the one-liner though. He just give you one-lines all day long.
He just is immediately funny that he can take whatever's going on. He's going to say something that's going to make you roll over. I don't know that he's the kind of guy that will write a set and get up and do that. It's a different thing, and that's what I learned from this, incidentally. But
so you just got bigger balls than Jeff.
Well, that's probably true, and we could verify that. That could be objectified, but the interesting thing with WineRevealed, I was away at a meditation retreat. My wife, is really kind of an advanced level meditator, and we do this. And I was deep in like we're barely like an awareness, like a deep into meditation. And I was able to like just ask a question. And the question was, what should I do? Because there's different things we could have been in. What should I do? And it came back. The answer that came back was, what would be the most fun? So I made the joke with Jeff afterwards, saying, "Hey, we should do Wine Revealed. Revealed our series," and he kind of laughed because he's passionate about wine. And next thing you know, circumstances showed up, and now we're making this docu-series. I don't know, if it's what commercial value it might have. We just got back from a couple of weeks touring Italy.
One of your best trips ever.
Yeah,
right?
One of my best trips ever. We had a full film crew with us, going to all these different wineries, et cetera. And of course, when you show up anywhere with film crew, you get treated really well. So that's a nice perk. And but I'm now I'm shocked at how many people are getting ready to support this series for us. I think it's going to do really well.
At least you can start writing off a lot more wine.
Listen, I had to make a blog with my wife about wine so I could pay for it with
strippers and soulmates.
Stripper soulmate wines.
Yeah,
soulmate. That's a whole nother story. But my wife's idea actually. And but now we actually made a film, so I'm really legitimate. I mean, you'll be.
It's all blurring the line between play and work, Patrick. Blurring the line between play and work.
Since you're my guru on this, you'll be the one to determine how much I can write off and when. But yes, it helps me write off.
I just found out I'm going to write off 50% of that side-by-side Can-Am you just saw before we walked up in the studio.
Oh, it's going to be on film, isn't it?
It's already on film. It's already out there.
Yeah.
And we're creating a liability release for our podcast guests to be able to use it when they come up to the podcast studio.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Well, I like that we're just, we're in a free-flowing state here to share a lot of what we've invested in and what we've experienced, and whether someone's just starting out or whether someone's really at a level of success. I've interviewed so many people. You've interviewed so many people. And every time I interviewed people with a ton of money, because I did a 2-hour day, 5 days a week radio show for 5 years. And then we had a once a month interview series that we did called Producer Interviews. And I would just, there's questions I always would ask, and a lot had to do with regret and a lot had to do with what was worth the money. But I always came down to like what quality of life meant to them. And that's what I see this being about, is helping people to identify their own quality of life. Not us telling what quality of life is, but just giving examples of you doing Wine Revealed and blurring that line between play and work, right? And being able to, I just think that too many people feel it's not possible. And when you feel it's not possible, you're going to experience it as impossible.
Right.
And if we could just at least plant some seeds and get people to question and think, and be able to start to apply and think through their philosophy so that they can have a higher standard of living, improve their quality of life, and overall pursue happiness to the highest degree.
And I'd even take that a step further. I would contend that your highest probability to create success is by doing something that would be the most fun for you to do. And you can't just take that statement without any context. But like for example, I love most to skydive.
I just love to have sex with my wife every day.
Yeah, well,
all day.
People have set up cameras and made that work for them.
Exactly.
You probably could.
I'm thoroughly convincing. I'm never going to convince my wife that that's going to be part of our life.
I'm a little concerned that you said you'd have to convince your wife as if it's fine by you.
Film it? I'm not.
Okay. So we'll keep going, but I think the point is, I will contend that if you're playing probability, if you're saying, nothing is certain, never is, and if it was, life would be pretty unexciting and depressing if everything was certain. So if nothing is certain, now you have to say, okay, what are the probabilities?
Right.
And I would look and say that, geez, if I want to do something that I want to really excel at in a sustainable way over a period of time and generate wealth from it, I will contend that if what is the most fun for you? What is something that you would enjoy? And I'm not talking about, barroom or fraternity type fun. I'm talking about enriching fun, that it's like something that you really have a passion around that matters.
Doing this podcast, over on the wall over here, I got my whiskey sommelier, so now I've got all the whiskey bottles. I've been taking barista courses at Intelligentsia, so we've got our latte machine over here. I've got a bunch of wine here so that you could explain that, because that's art, how you explain it. Yeah. It's art when you talk about dark chocolate, right? I've got a fly tying kit that I could see. Admittedly, I've got tobacco pipes because as a writer, I feel like it's douchey, but it's also creative, right? I've got a patch elbow patch jacket now that I'm going to go ahead and wear while I do that, you know. But it's just, to me, what are the satiating experiences?
Yeah.
What enhances quality of life?
Yeah.
And by doing that, that creates better conditions for me to be the highest level of a creator in this world as possible for content and value, because I've invested in myself, not just monetarily, but also with experience along the way, so that I don't live through regret, or I don't live through sacrifice, hoping that one day, someday I could retire. Right. I just take those mini experiences day by day.
And I think in the end, you know, what's the value of having monetary wealth if there's no experience? You know, you have the money so you can buy some experience. I mean, you know, that's really what you're trading it for, in essence. And you're right. I mean, you were surrounded by all kinds of really cool stuff here. When you said, hey, let's, I've got this concept for a studio and how I want what I want in it, and you know what kind of stuff could happen. I said, this is going to be fun, and you know, we're going to talk about things that, you know, we find to be very valuable, at least, or we think are important. But at the same time, hey, if we're you know, stimulating ourselves with our espresso shots over here, and then calming ourselves down with our wine or whiskey over here, you know, I called this. I walked in. I said, "Oh, this is a vice room. It's a room of vices."
I mean, I think of how funny it would be if you met me in my early 20s. Because every now and again you'd say, I wish I would have met Garrett 10 years earlier. And I'm like, I didn't know what I knew 10 years earlier. So I wouldn't have been as helpful.
I meant that selfishly, because I would be a whole lot wealthier if I had your advice earlier in my life.
I wish I would have had that same advice 10 years before that.
I don't know if I really wanted to, because I have seen you in your underwear standing on the roof of your garage.
And somehow you think I was funny.
And you were drunk, not funny.
Probably concerning. That was like my almost famous moment. You know, throwing a rock star party, by the way, after you were hosting an event for your ultimate achievers. Yeah, I was your speaker. Yeah. And then I said, you know what? I host this annual rock star party. Why don't we just have it during the event? And I remember my wife saying, you think this is a good idea? Like, these are going to become your clients. And I said, yeah, it's fine. And so we had a live band who really thought it was the 80s. They didn't know it wasn't the 80s. They showed up looking like the 80s and then got in their costumes and really looked like the makeup 80s.
I was going to say they looked like the 20 years after the 80s with their guts and spandex. It was not.
They looked like if Poison had a reunion. And so basically I speak all day, and all the breaks I played heavy metal music and rock music, right? And I sent videos and pictures to you to send to the group. So your group, they showed up. They were in spandex and leather. There was only a few people that weren't all in. Right. Everybody else, some people took it like Atari 80s or old workout tapes. But so it was fun. We throw this huge party. We have a couple kegs. We tell all the neighbors. We have the outdoor garage and the band playing, and all this kind of stuff's happening. And then the next day, my assistant had thrown up at the party, so she didn't show up to unlock the building. So I had to take your group upstairs and just pull the chairs out of the conference room to finish out the event. And what was great is the night before I said, we can take on 12 clients, 4 with me, 4 with this other person, 4 with this other person. Here's the pricing of it. And 2 people walked up. They said, you know what? I took to work with someone else. I want to work with you. And 2 other people go, I think I'll work with that someone else. So that was the perfect market to message, you know, and it was, and you know what, we had amazing success out of that event. And I just liked showing that in my life. And part of my commitment on this podcast is I grew up so much I live in Utah, and I had half of my family that's Mormon, half of my family that's Catholic. And I was growing up trying to be appeasing to everyone and hiding everything that I was. Right?
Yep.
Like, I didn't want my Mormon friends to know that I drank. I didn't want my, you know, like, I don't know. There's just like all that. And so I want to be really transparent, because I think it can help people. And if anything, help myself and be a lot more fun with us here.
Right.
And that was one of those experiences of just being myself.
Right.
Like, we're going to have a rock star party. And I have close friends from that. Still hang out with Peter Martoni, which he loved that. Right.
Yep.
Like, we just became fast friends from that, because he's like, what is this? This is great.
I have a book coming out in March with Hay House called Your Stand Is Your Brand. And one of the chapters is called Finding Your Miles Davis.
Yep.
And that's really what it's all about. It's basically saying, hey, when you find your Miles Davis, it'll become polarizing.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly what you said. People saw you drunk standing on a roof, and some people said, I want that dude to manage my money. And some people said, I want to work with somebody else.
By the way, one of the guy that switched out for me, his name's Steve.
Yeah.
He switched out for me. We saved him tens of thousands of dollars per month. And then he and I became friends the second year in the program.
Yep.
You know, it's just, I think it was a little overwhelming and scary for him at first. And then the other guy that switched, you know, I ended up talking to him later, but they were the only ones not dressed up. It was probably a little intense, but then the more they got to know me, the more they liked me, and it was fine.
Well,
you know,
the whole point is you didn't see, here's what would have been, I think, wrong. What would have been wrong is that you would have said, oh, you know what, I got to behave differently because,
right.
You see, if you were trying to do that for an affect, like saying, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm this wild, it would never work.
Right.
But when it's your Miles Davis, when it's the deepest music inside of you that you're letting out, and everybody can tell it's just real, either they're going to say, I like this music, or I don't.
I wore my wig back then. I don't have to now.
No.
I broke a guitar.
Yep, I remember that.
I bought it at like Walmart or something. It was cheap. And, you know, it was so much fun. And earlier this year, I was speaking in Birmingham, but I was doing 3 cities in 3 days. And so we were in Atlanta, and I didn't realize Birmingham, Alabama is on Central Time. Oh, yeah. So we got to Birmingham a little bit early, and we're just eating in a restaurant. And probably just because how I look, the guy goes, hey, you going to that Metallica concert tonight? It's like, I am now. Where's that? And so I called Jessica, who came to that Rockstar party.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Jessica, I'm in town. Why don't you and Russell come out? We're going to Metallica. I just bought 4 tickets.
That's awesome.
And she's like, Russell's in medical school. He's not here today. I said, fine, you're coming. Find a sitter. And then I just announced to the event, which was Entrepreneurs Organization, I said, Metallica concert tonight. I have an extra ticket. And this guy was a huge Metallica fan, had a cardigan on at the concert. We were just laughing. I'm like, you look like the least Metallica fan here. And you sang every lyric. But I mean, you know, it's like it opened up these kind of experiences where we were more bonded and connected. And you know, I know that it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I even think like that reawoken you a little bit on your little rock star status because you performed that night.
Oh, I grabbed the guitar and
then you played multiple. You played Cal Jam every year and all this, and when we had dinner the other night.
That's you know, and this is again blurring the line between work and pleasure. You know, because we're out producing so much, and there's so much travel with that. I used to speak. Probably I travel 150,000 miles a year speaking, and now it's like I can't do that many. I maybe only pick 5 gigs a year to speak at. But what's some of the criteria? Well, Cal Jam, they let me get on stage with the band and pick up a guitar.
And your daughter gets up and rocks it too.
And she rocks
I mean, she just crushed it. She's so good.
Yeah. So that's
and this is also the daughter that I had another rock star party for your group, and she's looking through your phone. And what did she?
Wow, you're just letting it all hang out today, huh?
Let me give context. My wife. I joked around when we got married. I'm like, you had to start creating rules, right? You started creating like rules. So I used to be like every now and again, she'd be like, hey, rule number 100 or whatever. She's just joking because I'm like trying to be the life of the party to get it going. So that party started out a little rocky.
First, you got to talk about the band. So
the band was like we pulled the Hobbits right out of Lord of the Rings.
But they were dressed like Kiss.
Well, the reason I brought them, they were
like literally they look like Hobbits.
The year that we hosted the party at my house, this time I rented a bar.
Right.
Because we had moved to my wife's like, the new neighborhood isn't as conducive to this. So I went down into the bathroom downstairs and couldn't get into the bathroom because one of the band members, when I knocked open the door and they were snorting cocaine. And I was like, this is bullshit. We can't, no.
They never left the 80s.
So I was like, they're not coming back. There's no way they're getting invited back. And then one of my good friends, one of the guitarists was hitting on his girlfriend, now wife.
That was a fight out.
And he knocked her out. He knocked the guy out. He knocked the guy out. And the guitarist looked at me and I go, I guess it's time to leave. Like, what do you want from me, right? And then I told my buddy, I'm like, dude, that was Rockstar. I kept telling him. And so I had to get a new band because I'm like, that's not gonna happen. That doesn't fly for me.
When I saw that band, this is when I should have known you were funny.
Right. So then I bring this other band in and they just look like hobbits dressed up as Kiss. That's the best way to describe it. But here's the deal. They were so loving it, right? They were excited to be performing. And what was cool is I got up on the mic and they were cool with it. So then your crew started getting up on the mic and were cool with it. But at one point when they weren't really in sync, they didn't finish the song. Like some Bon Jovi song, they got off sync and they just stopped. And so my wife looks at me, she goes, you better turn it up. You better make this party a little bit more fun. So I started ripping my jeans. Yeah. And then I threw my shirt off.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So here, let's just say that somehow you had a wardrobe shift during the night. And of course, everybody come dressed up. So it's, I don't know, it's a week or two later, because I took pictures. I got my phone. And my daughter...
Someone threw this up on stage, just so you know.
My daughter's scrolling through my pictures, and all of a sudden she stops and looks a little bit like stunned. She goes, Dad, is this Garrett Gunderson in a pink bra?
And it was actually. Yeah.
I just looked at her and said, yep.
Someone just threw it up on stage when I threw my shirt, so I put it on.
Your jeans are torn, you're shirtless, and next thing you know, you got pink bra. And well, of course, I got to take a shot of that. But wow. And my daughter, I think, she was 14 or 13 at the time or whatever. I think it left them. She still remembers it, incidentally. She brings it up. So
I'm glad I could make an impression.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if it's the right one.
There's a fast forward on this now. As of yesterday, you're the first person to know this. My daughter turned 18 recently, and what's the first thing an 18-year-old wants to go do? Get a tattoo, right? And I'm like, I told my kids, before, I said, listen, here's what I thought. I was playing a little reverse. Like, whatever tattoo you get, I'm getting. So like, it'd be like that I thought would dissuade them. But my daughter, who's a singer-songwriter, extraordinarily talented. Incidentally, for all you entrepreneurs out here, I could tell you this is a proud moment for my daughter stepping into her own career, because she'd have people say to her, when they said, "What are you going to do?" She's not going to college. She's got 40 songs now. She's got several of them recorded. She's on her way, and they say to her, "What's your fallback? If that doesn't work out?" And she looks at them with like her head cocks, and maybe you didn't understand me. There's no fallback. It's not like, I
burn the bridges, right?
Yeah, it's like, well,
send the ships away.
This is my purpose. Yeah. When you know what your purpose is, it's not like you have a fallback. This is your purpose. You figure it out. You don't. If you have a fallback, you don't figure it out. You fall back.
Right, because as long as your vision's bigger than your problems, you persevere. Essentially,
your vision's got to be bigger than your fear at all times. Yep. Everybody has fear,
and vision should create a little bit of that fear. How could I accomplish this?
If you're not a little nervous about it, you're not thinking big enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, when she was a little girl, I used to sit her on my lap, and I played the Elton John song. By
the way, I don't know if you said I got a guitar hanging over there too.
Oh,
I have a guitar on the wall. I mean, I'm making sure this podcast has all everything. The resources.
I'll have to bring one of my pianos by then, because I'm okay on guitar, much better on piano. But anyway, so I used to play your song and sing it to her. And she would, when she was 5 years old, 6 years old, 7, and she remembered it. So anyway, there's the one line, "How wonderful life is while you're in the world." It's like the refrain at the end of the chorus. And so she said, "Okay, I'm getting a tattoo. I'm putting it right over, by my heart, and it's going to be the music notes, from your song, where it says how wonderful life is while you're in the world."
And that's Elton John's
your song.
So when I was in Italy, I was telling my wife, I'm like, what are the most epic shows we need to see? What are the best concerts? And so we came up with the top 10, and Elton was on the top 10, and he happened to be in Italy while we were there.
Wow. So you see it?
So we drove to this little town in Italy, and there was a church on one side and a castle on the other, and then a courtyard in between, and he performed in the courtyard, and that was my kids' first concert. Well, they'd been when they're little, they don't really remember. It's the first one they remember.
Right.
And so then my son did this whole thing at school where he did a cardboard cutout of Elton John, and he had to put his mouth in and tell stories of Elton John. And I was like, how crazy this kid, going to a Jewish school, talking about Elton John, and saw funny sunglasses and makeup and stuff like that. But it was, awesome. It was really impactful for him to see it. And I'm like, this guy's pretty old, but look at how hard he's performing.
He still rocks, man. He's and
can't hit the high notes, but he still put his full effort in. No. Right? Like, he's still rocking the piano, still, dressed up.
I just on a plane a couple days ago, watched, they have a documentary of one of his Vegas shows called $1 Million Piano, and he's phenomenal. So anyway, what happened yesterday? The tattoo, we both got it.
So you got it?
Right here. Yep.
So I got to be careful not to pat you there, because I hugged you earlier.
Sore. It's all right.
Sure not to.
But she had her friend who's an artist draw it out. And I looked at it and put it up against the sheet music to make sure it was exactly accurate. And that phrase, "how wonderful life is while you're in the world," is over my heart here. My daughter's got the same one.
So you're telling this really touching story?
Yeah.
My comedic mind only has one thing in it.
I go ahead.
So Sebastian Maniscalco, one of my favorite comedians.
So
do you ever hear what he said?
No.
He's like, tattoo? I would never put a bumper sticker on this Ferrari.
Yeah.
And I can't say it the way he says it. He's got that crazy, funny cadence and all that.
I could picture him saying it. So, so it's a good connection between my daughter and I. And,
no, I think it's awesome.
I hope
and then you've got a tattoo. You and Lori have the same tattoo.
It's a symbol of our purpose.
Yeah,
yep.
That's great.
So we have that. So I'm hoping I'm done, but we'll see what you boys do.
Yeah. It's time to shrug sacrifice and instead embrace love, embrace life, and really go out there and have quality of life at the forefront so you can live the best life and who you actually are.